I came home early to surprise my wife, but the real surprise was watching her step out of another man's car and kiss him like I never existed. That moment shattered everything, and what came next changed my life forever. I totally get that feeling, the grind, the routine, the sense that every day is just a loop you can't break out of. That was my life. My name's Elliot, I'm 30, and I work as a technician for a small repair company. It's not glamorous, it's not my dream job, but it keeps the lights on, most of the time anyway. Then there's my wife Dora. She's 28. We've been together for 10 years, married for 5. My first love. My only love. Neither of us had it easy growing up. No safety nets, no wealthy parents to bail us out. Everything we had, we built from scratch. It wasn't much, but it was ours. And I thought it was solid. I really did. But a few months ago something changed. It was subtle at first, little things barely noticeable. Dora started working late more often, coming home exhausted, barely saying 2 words before crashing in bed. At first I didn't think much of it. She worked in marketing and that world's cutthroat. I figured she was pushing herself, trying to get ahead. Still something felt off. One night I asked her about it. Everything okay? You've been working late a lot. She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile I knew. It didn't reach her eyes. Yeah babe. Work's just crazy. There's a promotion on the line and I need to show my boss I'm serious. It made sense. At least it should have. But the late nights kept stacking up. And then there was the phone, always on silent, always face down. I tried to joke about it once. What's with the phone? You got government secrets in there or something? She laughed, but it felt forced. Come on Elliot, it's just work stuff. Clients message me at all hours, you know how it is. Except I didn't know how it was. And I had this feeling in my gut, the kind that creeps up on you, whispering that something isn't right. But I ignored it. Because this was Dora. We'd been through everything together. She wouldn't lie to me. Then one Friday my boss let us off early. A system update went smoother than expected, so I had the whole afternoon free. Dora was supposed to be home working on a big project, so I figured I'd surprise her. On my way back I stopped by the bakery and grabbed her favorite, strawberry cheesecake. A little gesture, something to break the routine, maybe even remind us of how things used to be. But when I walked through the front door, the apartment was silent. No laptop humming. No papers scattered on the dining table. Just nothing. At first I didn't think much of it. Maybe she'd stepped out for coffee or gone for a walk. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then the hours started slipping by. I called her, but it went straight to voicemail. No response. That's when I heard it, a car door slamming outside. I walked over to the window and what I saw made my stomach drop. Dora stepped out of a sleek black car. The man behind the wheel? Tall, confident, the kind of guy who didn't take orders, he gave them. His suit was expensive, tailored perfectly to someone used to being in control. They stood there for a moment, laughing, talking like they had all the time in the world. And then he leaned in. And she kissed him. Not a friendly peck. No, this was different. By the time she walked through the front door, I was already sitting at the kitchen table, the cheesecake still in its box, untouched. Hey, you're home early, she said, her voice light, casual, like nothing was wrong. She set her purse down, smiling at me like she always did. I didn't smile back. Where were you? For just a second, one brief second, her face twitched. But then just as quickly she smoothed it over, her expression practiced and controlled. Oh, I just ran some errands, she said, brushing a hand through her hair. Needed a break from my project. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. Errands, huh? You run those with a guy in a black car? She blinked. The smile faltered. What are you talking about? I saw you, Dora. My voice was steady, but inside, everything was unraveling. I saw you kiss him. Her breath hitched just for a moment, but then she straightened, her tone sharpening. Elliot, come on, that's my boss, Niels. My car wouldn't start this morning, so he gave me a ride. That kiss? It was just friendly, a thank you. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Friendly? I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. You really expect me to believe that? Her expression hardened. Elliot, don't be paranoid. That word. Paranoid. It hit like a slap. I pushed my chair back and stood up, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Let me see your phone. Dora's fingers clenched around it like a lifeline. That told me everything I needed to know. Without waiting for permission, I reached over and snatched it from her hands. She gasped, lunging for it, but I was done playing nice. My heart pounded as I unlocked her messages. And there it was. Text after text from Niels. Late night plans. Flirty conversations. Pictures. Ones that made my stomach twist so hard I thought I might be sick. How long? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She swallowed hard. A few months. It just happened, Elliot, she stammered. I stood there, gripping her phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, her voice small, shaky. He promised me a promotion. I was trying to secure our future. Our future. I actually had to take a second to process the words coming out of her mouth. Our future? I repeated slowly, my chest tightening. You cheated on me for a job? I made a mistake, okay? I'm sorry, she rushed out. I was under so much pressure, and Niels, he made me feel important. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Important? That's all it took? Some guy in a suit feeding you compliments? She reached for me, desperation in her eyes. Elliot, please. I love you. I do. I stepped back out of her reach. No. You don't get to play the I love you card after this. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I saw them. That kiss. The way she smiled when she talked to him. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had loved with everything I had, she threw it all away. And for what? A shot at climbing the corporate ladder? By morning, Dora was acting like nothing had happened. She moved around the kitchen making coffee, forcing small talk. I barely grunted in response. Days turned into weeks and I was still stuck in this fog. My life felt shattered. We barely spoke, just the basics. And then one night she finally said it. Elliot, we need to talk. I turned to face her, already exhausted by whatever excuse she was about to give. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. I lost my job. I blinked. Wait, what? You got fired? Her face was pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Yeah. Niels, he promised me a promotion, but instead he threw me under the bus. Someone found out about us. I let out a low whistle, shaking my head. Wow. So, the guy you wrecked our marriage for just tossed you aside? Real classy. She swallowed hard, eyes glossy. Elliot, I didn't plan for this to happen. He told me everything would be fine. Yeah, well, I muttered, running a hand through my hair, you should have known better. I thought that was the end of it. That she'd said all she needed to say. But then, just as I was about to walk away, she spoke again. There's something else. I didn't like the way she said that. Something in her tone, hesitant, almost fearful, made my stomach twist. Jesus, what now? I muttered. Dora took a deep breath, eyes flickering with something between guilt and desperation. I'm pregnant? For a moment I just stared at her, my brain refusing to process the words. You're pregnant? I repeated slowly. She nodded. Yeah. And then, just when I thought I couldn't feel any more broken, she dropped the real bomb. It might be Niels. I exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down my face. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice tight. You lost your job, you're pregnant, and the father could be the same guy who just screwed you over at work? That about sum it up? She nodded again, tears spilling down her cheeks. I know how bad this looks, Elliot, she whispered. But I need you now more than ever. We can raise the baby together. Maybe this could even bring us closer. I let out a hollow, humorless laugh. Closer? I repeated, shaking my head. Are you even hearing yourself? You expect me to raise a kid that might not even be mine? After everything? Dora wiped at her face, stepping toward me. Please, Elliot. We've been through so much together. Don't throw it all away. That set me off. You already did that when you started sleeping with your boss. It was a mistake, she sobbed. I was scared, I was under so much pressure, and you chose to betray me. I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. That was your choice, Dora. She let out a shaky breath. I'm scared, Elliot. I can't do this alone. And there it was. The real reason. Not love. Not regret. Just fear. Fear of being alone. I knew that fear too well. It gnawed at me, clawed at my insides. Because deep down I felt it too. For years Dora was all I had. No family. No close friends. Just her. But now, my wife was pregnant with a baby that might not even be mine. And she wanted me to act like we could somehow fix this. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to speak. I need time to think. Then I walked out. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in that house another second. A few days later, I was back, but barely. I wasn't really living, just existing. My mind was a mess. Work felt impossible. Every time I tried to focus, my thoughts drifted back to her, to him, to the wreckage of what my life used to be. Dora, on the other hand, was still clinging to some ridiculous hope that we could patch things up, like our marriage was just a broken appliance she could fix with a little time and effort. I wasn't buying it. Then out of nowhere the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My gut twisted, that instinctive warning that something wasn't right. I opened the door. And there he was. Niels. The man himself, standing there like he was about to sell me a damn used car. My jaw clenched. What the hell do you want? His expression was smooth, too smooth. Polished. Practiced. Elliot, right? He flashed a fake smile and extended a hand, like we were old buddies catching up over coffee. I didn't take it. He lowered his hand, unfazed. Look, I know things have been complicated, he said in that sales pitch tone, the kind designed to make you feel at ease while he emptied your pockets. I wanted to come by and clear the air. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Oh, you mean that moment when you slept with my wife and then got her fired? Yeah, I'd say things are a little complicated. He sighed, adjusting his expensive watch like this whole situation was just some mild inconvenience. I get it. You're angry. You have every right to be, he said, his voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. But I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to make things right for everyone. Make things right? I stepped forward, my fists balling at my sides. You think you can just waltz in here and play peacemaker? My voice was low, steady, but filled with barely contained rage. You ruined my life. Niels held up his hands, like he was calming a wild animal. Elliot, listen. I didn't plan for this to happen, Niels said, his voice calm, measured. I'm just here to find a solution. We're all adults, right? I forced my fists to unclench, my nails leaving crescent marks in my palms. Fine, I said through gritted teeth. Talk. He nodded like he had just won some small victory, like I had given him an inch and he was already planning how to take a mile. Look, I have a family of my own, he began, lowering his voice like we were negotiating some kind of shady business deal. I can't afford for this to get out. If my wife finds out, it'll destroy everything. I crossed my arms, staring at him, waiting for the punchline. So here's what I'm proposing, he continued smoothly. I'll provide financial support, for the baby, for Dora. We both know she's in a tough spot right now. This can be a win-win. I stared at him, barely processing the words. A win-win? I echoed, shaking my head in disbelief. Are you kidding me? No, I'm serious, he said, nodding like this was the most rational, logical solution in the world. You and Dora will have financial stability, and I'll stay out of your lives as much as possible. All I ask is that we keep this quiet. I could feel my temper boiling over. So let me get this straight, I said, voice tight. You want me to play happy family with my cheating wife, raise a kid that might be yours, and in return you'll write a few checks to make yourself feel better? Before Niels could respond, I heard a gasp behind me. Niels? I turned to see Dora standing in the doorway, eyes wide, face pale. Niels didn't flinch. His polished smile stayed perfectly intact. Dora, he said smoothly. Niels barely missed a beat. I was just explaining the plan, he said smoothly. I'm willing to help financially. Dora's face lit up like he had just handed her a golden ticket. Really? She asked, her voice almost hopeful. That could be a huge help. Then, without missing a beat, she turned to me. Elliot, this could make things easier for both of us. I just stared at her, completely stunned. Easier? I repeated, my voice hollow. I turned back to Niels. This guy. The same man who had an affair with my wife, got her fired, and now had the nerve to show up at my door acting like some kind of savior. You had an affair with my wife, I said, my voice cold. You got her fired, and now you think you can just walk in here and clean it all up with a few checks? He held my gaze, still playing the part of the composed, rational man. I just want to help, he said. I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. You don't want to help, Niels. You just want to clean up your mess before it ruins your life. Dora grabbed my arm. Elliot, please, just think about it. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't thinking about me. She wasn't even thinking about us. She was thinking about herself. About how this could keep her life from completely falling apart. I took a step back, exhaling sharply. You know what? I said, my voice eerily calm. I need a break from this circus. Both of you, get out of my face. Dora opened her mouth to protest, but one look from me shut her down. Niels sighed, raising his hands in surrender. All right. I'll give you some time. But think it over, Elliot. This doesn't have to end badly. The moment the door clicked shut behind them, I collapsed onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. They were both pushing me into a corner, trying to make me feel like I had no choice. But I wasn't about to let them control my life. I didn't have family to back me up, no safety net to catch me. But I still had myself. A few days later, Dora sat across from me at the kitchen table, her expression oddly chipper. You know, she said, swirling her coffee, I've been thinking. That's dangerous, I muttered. She ignored me. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. I nearly choked on my water. A blessing? I repeated, staring at her. Are you out of your mind? Hear me out, she said, her tone almost cheerful. Niels is going to help us financially. We'll be more stable than we've ever been. We can raise the baby together. Doesn't that sound good? I set my glass down slowly, my fingers tightening around it. Good? I repeated, my voice rising. Dora, are you even listening to yourself? You're acting like this whole mess is some kind of fairy tale ending. She sighed, shaking her head like I was the one being unreasonable. But I couldn't do this. I wouldn't do this. I can't live like this, I said firmly. I won't. And with that, I walked out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. A few mornings later, I found myself wandering through the park, my thoughts tangled, my head spinning. I didn't know what I was looking for, clarity, peace, and escape. All I knew was that if I didn't figure this out soon, I was going to lose my damn mind. Elliot, my boy, you look like you've seen a ghost, a familiar voice called out. I turned and saw him, Eric. The old man had been a fixture at the park for years, working as a cleaner. He was dressed in his usual faded green jacket and a cap that looked like it had seen better decades. Tell me what's going on, son, he said, his voice warm but firm. You can't face this alone. Before I knew it, the whole story came pouring out. The affair. The pregnancy. Neil's manipulative offer. The fear of being trapped in a life I didn't want. By the time I finished, I felt drained. I don't know how to move forward, I whispered. I want to get out of this, but I'm broke. I can't afford a lawyer. I don't even know where to start. Eric placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, his grip steady. Sounds like you've been through hell, Elliot. But you're not alone in this, he said, his eyes kind. You're stronger than you think. I let out a shaky breath. Man, I swallowed hard. I don't even know what to say. Don't worry about that, he said, patting my shoulder. Let me give Matt a call. We'll set up a meeting and get you the support you need. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. For the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone in this as I thought. A few days later, Eric set everything up and I found myself walking into a small coffee shop near the park. The air smelled like fresh espresso and pastries, but I barely noticed. My mind was too wired, my nerves too shot. That's when I saw him. Matt. He looked like the kind of guy who had seen his fair share of battles, not in a physical sense but in the way he carried himself. Calm, confident, but sharp, like he could cut through any mess and come out clean. Elliot, he greeted, standing up to shake my hand. Eric told me you're dealing with a pretty rough situation. I want you to know, I'm here to help. No strings attached. I exhaled, tension easing just a bit. Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. I don't even know where to start. Matt leaned forward, serious but not intimidating. All right. Here's what you need to understand. If you're serious about divorce, you need to act fast. The longer you wait, the more complicated this will get, especially with a child involved. We need to get ahead of this before it spirals out of control. I nodded, absorbing his words. Tell me something, he continued. Do you have access to Dora's messages with Niels? Any proof of their affair? My mind raced back to all the times Dora left her phone lying around, too distracted to pay attention. I nodded. Yeah, I think I can. Matt looked pleased. Good. Once you have that, we'll secure those messages and start building a case. It's not the strongest evidence, but it's better than nothing. He leaned back, giving me a moment to process before adding, once we file for divorce, the court will require a paternity test. That alone could give us more leverage. We spent the next hour going over the details. Matt was thorough but approachable. He made everything sound manageable, like this wasn't the end of my life, just the start of something new. That night, I sat on the couch, pretending to watch TV while my mind ran circles around everything Matt had told me. The next day, I met with him again. I handed over the evidence, the messages between Dora and Niels. Matt skimmed through them, nodding as he scrolled. This isn't a slam dunk, but it's a start. Let's move forward. That evening, I sat Dora down at the kitchen table. There was no point in sugarcoating it. I filed for divorce, I said flatly. Her eyes widened, pure shock washing over her face. Elliot, no. You can't be serious. I am. My voice was cold, steady, final. This is over, Dora. You made your choices, now it's time to face the consequences. Tears streamed down her face. No, please, Elliot. But the wheels were already in motion. Matt filed the divorce papers that day. Now all we had to do was wait for the paternity test, which meant waiting for the baby to be born. Months away. But things didn't stay quiet for long. Word got back to Niels. And he wasn't thrilled that his little secret was unraveling. A few days later, Matt called me. "Elliot," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Niels reached out. He wants to meet. Him, you and me." I frowned. "Why?" "He's panicking," Matt replied, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. "Probably afraid his wife is about to find out." The meeting. When I arrived at the conference room, Niels was already there. He sat stiffly in his chair, adjusting his sleeves, like he was trying to regain control of the situation. He exhaled sharply. "All right," he began, his voice tight. "Let's just get this over with. What do you want?" Matt leaned back in his chair, completely unfazed. "What we want is simple," he said smoothly. "Elliot is filing for divorce. The paternity of the child is under question, which means your involvement is going to be scrutinized by the court." Niels' jaw tightened. Matt smirked. "And we both know you don't want your wife to find out." Niels' eyes flashed with anger. "Don't play games with me, Mitchell. This isn't about my wife." Matt didn't even blink. "Oh, but it is," he said smoothly. "You're scared out of your mind that she's going to find out you've been having an affair, and that you might have fathered another woman's child. That's why you're here. Because you're desperate to keep this under wraps." Matt leaned in, his tone sharpening. "Well, news flash, Elliot isn't going to play daddy to your kid, and he sure as hell isn't going to stay silent while you try to manipulate your way out of this." Niels' jaw clenched. He hated that he wasn't in control here. Matt continued, not giving him a second to recover. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to meet with both Elliot and Dora. We're going to draw up a formal agreement. No more vague offers. No more stalling. Either you commit to a clear financial plan or we take this to court. And trust me, Niels, you don't want your wife sitting in that courtroom hearing all the dirty details." Niels' shoulders sagged. He knew he was cornered. He exhaled sharply, defeated. "Fine," he muttered. "Set up the meeting?" Matt nodded, satisfied. "Good choice. We'll be in touch." Niels stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The final meeting. A few days later, I found myself sitting in a conference room, the weight of everything pressing down on me. Matt sat beside me, calm as ever, flipping through a stack of papers. Across from me sat Dora, looking exhausted but still trying to keep it together. Niels walked in last, tension radiating off him. Matt leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. "All right, everyone," he began, his tone firm. "Let's cut to the chase. We're here to settle this once and for all." Matt leaned forward, his voice firm. "I'm going to outline a plan that benefits all of you because trust me, the alternatives? A lot worse." Niels crossed his arms. "Let's hear it." Matt laid out the terms, his tone all business. "First," he said, turning to Dora, "you agree to the divorce. No stalling, no dragging this out, and no future claims against Elliot. Once the papers are signed, you two go your separate ways." Dora shifted uncomfortably but didn't argue. Matt turned to Niels next. "You," he said, "are going to pay child support. Since paternity is still in question, you'll be expected to pay half until the test confirms the father. And if the baby turns out to be yours..." Niels' face hardened. "I'm not just handing over a blank check," he snapped. Matt shrugged, completely unfazed. "Then we go to court. We make this very public. Your wife finds out, your career takes a hit, and suddenly you're not just dealing with a cheating scandal, you're dealing with a paternity lawsuit." Niels' jaw tightened. He knew Matt wasn't bluffing. Dora, who had been quiet until now, suddenly scoffed, crossing her arms. "Are you kidding me?" she snapped. $100,000 isn't enough. Do you have any idea how expensive it is to raise a child? I need at least double that." Niels let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, come on. You're delusional. I'm not made of money." Niels shot back. Dora scoffed. "You're a corporate executive. Don't act like you can't afford it." Their argument was cut short by Matt's voice, sharp and controlled. "Enough," he said, his tone like a knife slicing through the tension. Both Dora and Niels fell silent. Matt leaned forward, his gaze icy. "Let's get one thing straight. If this goes to court, it's going to get ugly for both of you. This deal is clean, simple, and avoids a legal circus. You can fight about the money all you want, but trust me, you'll both come out worse if you do." A long, heavy silence hung between us. Niels was the first to break, his shoulders sagging in defeat. "Fine," he muttered. "But I want this done. No more surprises." Dora hesitated, then sighed. "All right. I'll agree." Matt nodded, satisfied. "Good. I'll draft the official agreement, you'll both sign it and we'll move forward. 1 week later. The agreement was signed and sealed. Matt handled everything like a pro. Contracts, signatures, court filings. And just like that, it was done. At the final hearing, Dora stood before the judge, her voice steady but distant as she recited the agreed-upon statement. We've reached an understanding. I have no claims against Elliot, and I'm unsure of the biological father of my child. I'll handle things from here. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly curious but didn't push further. All right then, he said, flipping through the paperwork. If there are no further disputes, I hereby finalize the divorce. You're both free to move on with your lives. And just like that, it was over. 5 years of marriage reduced to a few signatures and the sound of a judge's gavel. That evening, I met Matt and Eric at the same coffee shop where everything had started. Matt sat back, swirling his coffee. I owe a lot to this guy, he admitted, nodding toward Eric. He was like a father to me, kept me on the right path when I could have gone the wrong way. Everything I've accomplished? I owe to him. Eric waved him off with a grin. Oh, come on now. You've done plenty on your own. Then he turned to me, his expression warm. But yeah, when I heard you were in trouble, I knew Matt would help. That's what family does. Chosen family. A lump formed in my throat. Well, I said, voice thick with emotion, I'm damn lucky to have met both of you. In the weeks that followed, life didn't magically fall into place overnight, but for the first time in a long time I felt like I could breathe again. Dora moved out and I stayed in the apartment, our apartment, except now it was just mine. It felt empty at first, but strangely that emptiness was a relief. No more forced conversations, no more waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just me figuring out what came next. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts, keeping myself busy. It was easier than dealing with the emotions I didn't want to process. The paternity test. Then, a few months later, I got a call from Matt. The results are in, he said simply. I already knew. Deep down, I already knew. Still, when I saw the paper in front of me, black and white proof, it hit different. Niels was the father. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was confirmation of what I had suspected all along, but somehow, seeing it spelled out so clearly made it feel final. Like a closing chapter in a book I never wanted to be part of in the first place. I texted Dora, short, to the point. Paternity test came back. The kid's his. Good luck. She read it but didn't reply. Moving forward, I thought I'd feel anger or bitterness, but mostly I just felt done. It wasn't my fight anymore. Wasn't my life anymore. Instead of dwelling on what was lost, I focused on what was ahead. Eric helped me out more than I could ever repay. He got me in touch with some people, and before long I had a new job opportunity, one that actually paid what I was worth. Matt and I stayed in touch. He joked about how I'd got the divorce discount on his usual fees, but truthfully I owed that guy everything. One night as I sat on my balcony looking out at the city, I realized something. For the first time in a long, long time, I was free. Months later, life had settled into something new. Something mine. I moved out of the old apartment, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Too many memories lingered in those walls and I was done living in the past. I found a place closer to work, nothing fancy but it felt right. A fresh start. Eric was still around, always checking in like the father figure I never had. Matt and I stayed in touch too, grabbing a drink now and then. Every time I saw him, he'd crack some joke about how I'd dodged a lifetime of child support payments and remind me how much I owed him. First round's on you as usual, he'd say, grinning. Dora and Niels? I heard bits and pieces about them through the grapevine. Niels' wife found out everything, not just about the affair but about the payoff deal he tried to make. Last I heard, she filed for divorce and took him for everything she could. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. Dora? Well, she had the baby. I didn't reach out. She didn't either. And that was fine by me. A new beginning. One evening, I found myself back at the same coffee shop where Matt and Eric had helped me put my life back together. But this time there was no crisis. No weight on my shoulders. Just me sitting with a cup of coffee thinking about what's next. A woman at the counter caught my eye. She wasn't flashy or overly done up. Just someone who carried herself with an easy confidence, lost in a book while waiting for her drink. For the first time in forever, I thought, maybe I'll say hello. Maybe it was time to stop looking back and start looking forward. Because the past? That story was finished. And I was ready to start writing the next one.